Good morning. My name is Don Tempest. I'm a forester for Weyerhaeuser, and here in Appomattox County, we have an ownership of land base of ownership that we harvest trees and we reestablish or reforestate the sites. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about what happens after the site's been harvested. What do we do to get it back in trees and how that work is done? So today, this site was prepared for planting last fall. Last fall we used a helicopter and we sprayed out a herbaceous mix across this site to control the hardwood species that are in front of you here. And we want our pine trees to be able to be, free of competition from the hardwoods. We're trying to grow these loblolly pine seedlings. Today, I'm going to show you how those trees were actually planted. And here's a tree that was planted about a month ago. And I want to dig it up and show you why it's important to get this tree planted correctly. As you look at this tree that was planted by hand, this tree was come out of a bag and it looked just like this. It's a bare root seedling and it was planted in the ground. And when it was grown in the nursery, it was in the ground in the nursery to about this point here we call the root collar. We like to plant at least an inch above that back in the ground to protect all the roots from drying out and making sure we get them deep in the soil where there's plenty of moisture. But the guys that plant use a special tool called a hodad, and they swing it and they open a hole in the ground, kind of like what we have here, and then they plant each tree individually, and they plant it about an inch above that root collar, and they pack it tight, and they continue in a line. And for us, we plant trees every 6 feet on a line in the field. And then the guys will step over and we plant 12 feet between our rows. And so every track or plot of land that we plant on a 6 foot by 12 foot spacing. And like I said, it's been about a month after this site was planted, and you can already see that the seedlings are starting to put out new growth, and they're responding to having good soil moisture and having the right soil media back around their root systems.
So where is that new growth, Don?
This new kind of fluorescent green is the new growth from the seedling that was planted. There's a really good example right beside you, Andrew. We'll walk over here and I'll show you this one. This one is really showing it's happy in its new environment. It's got new growth on 5 different shoots here, saying that the root system is starting to build and it's starting to capture the nutrition and the water that's available in the soil. And it's really, really doing a great job getting off on a good start. I'm good, let me know. So at every site that we plant, we have a crew of the Hispanic labor guys that come up from Guatemala, either Guatemala, Honduras, or Mexico. And when they come here, there's usually 12 to 15 of them in a crew. And each crew, each man will load up about 1,000 trees in 2 bags that he has on a vest that he puts on his body, and then he takes his hodad and he starts planting, every individual will plant between 2,000 and 3,000 trees each day. And so in an average day, those guys will plant around 50 to 60 acres as a crew every day. And they'll work 6 days a week doing that.
And an acre is about the size of a football field, is that approximately?
Yeah, it is. I mean, an acre for us, you know, is 43,560 square feet. And we plant 605 of these trees on each of those acres. And that's a 12 by 6 spacing with our seedlings.
And just to make sure everybody heard, that's 2,000 to 3,000 trees a person a day. And that's a slower individual. Every now and again, you need fuel and more mix.
Just watched was a helicopter coming in and refilling up with mix. The helicopter comes in, he picks up about 90 gallons worth of mix, herbicide mix, and we're putting out 15 gallons per acre. So he takes out about 6 acres worth of mix each time he comes and lands on the top of that truck. When he does that, it takes him about a minute for each acre. So he sprays between 5 and 6 minutes. He'll come in and land on this truck. He'll pick up mix, which will usually take between 1 and 2 minutes. He also, at some point, will add some fuel to his helicopter to ensure that he can continue to fly one, but he only picks up a certain amount to keep his payload light as he can so that he can maximize the amount of work that he takes out each time. But the site that he's spraying is a site that we just planted in pines about a month ago, and those sites will be sprayed to help keep the competition from the weeds and the woody material, but primarily from these weeds and grasses that are out here on these sites. We're trying to control stuff like this so that the new loblolly pines that we planted can have all the water and nutrition that the soil has to provide so that they can uptake that and grow to their full potential.
So we saw in that shot, Don, the helicopter flying. Can you describe what you like to see when that...
Well, one of the things about this work is it has to be done when there's very minimal wind. The wind is probably our biggest enemy when we're trying to do this work, because as that helicopter was flying and you saw in that video, when the spray comes off of his boom that's on the front of the helicopter, it falls like a curtain. And we want that curtain to fall completely all the way to the ground and not be moving or washing out. And so the only time these guys can fly is usually when there's very light winds. We'll usually spray up to maybe 3, 4, 5 mile an hour max with the wind in any direction. But what we really like is calm winds, because we know we get the best coverage and we get the chemical exactly where we want it on the sites. The guys use a GPS system in their helicopter to adjust their swath width, and they use that as guidance to move over. Every time they complete a path, they move over to the next set of coordinates, and it directs them exactly where to fly on the track so that we get even coverage completely across the entire track. All right, here we are on another site that Weyerhaeuser has that, earlier we were on a site where you saw where we had just planted seedlings. They were about a month old, and they were only probably, 10 to 14 inches tall. Here we are, we're standing at a site where the trees are beginning their second growing season. They've already put on a lot of new growth already this year. Here we are the first week of May. They've already grown, from anywhere from 6 to 8 to 10 inches already this year. But last fall, these trees were between 2 feet and 3 feet, 3.5 foot tall. So here we are at the beginning of the second growing season for this loblolly pine plantation. So you see how quickly, if everything's done right and the trees have the opportunity to capture the water and the nutrition in the soil, and you have done a good job of controlling the competition around them, these trees will respond and grow very rapidly for you. So this is what we desire when we establish a plantation, is have trees like this at the beginning of the second growing season. So great tree.
Now, what would you say that diameter is down there, Don, on the base?
The base, or what we call root collar, this one is, it's definitely probably about 1 3/4 inches to almost 2 inches in diameter. So it's showing us that it's really happy, it's growing really fast. This is also an indication that the root system is establishing itself, it's feeding on the nutrition that's available in the soil, and it's really doing a great job of growing.
Who says trees don't grow fast?
This is the beginning of its second growing season.
And Dawn's not short. Sustainability is the name of the game. Growing trees for the future so we can continue to have a valuable resource. Good silviculture means good trees for the future.